Okay. One question is, how often do I need to clean my brooder?
How often do you need to clean your brooder? Generally, you don't. Like I said, I'm not a. You don't need to clean it a whole lot of times because certain amount of like I said that the bacteria and things that are growing there are kind of beneficial. Like the coccidiosis, there's a certain amount of immunity that is picked up through the feces, but you don't want it to be nasty, and especially if it's wet. There's any time of wetness, you definitely do need to clean it or at least cover it up with another layer of something. But you don't have to be fastidious about it, keeping it clean. You don't have to clean it every day because you're just going to create more trouble than what it's worth. So I would say, once a week. I'll just throw that out there. But there's always a circumstance, like I say, if there's a lot of water, if there's a lot of moisture gets in there, or if you happen to notice an ammonia smell, then you definitely need to do something right there. So
yeah, I was going to recommend the smell check.
They're getting bigger, so their messes are getting bigger, but it's all pretty dry, and it seems the pine shavings seem to be absorbing everything. So it doesn't seem like an issue, but I just want to make sure I'm not doing anything incorrectly.
No, it doesn't sound like you are. Like I say, it's the smell is like as Julian was saying. That if you open it up and you get hit with a smell, in particular like an ammonia type of smell, then you need to do something.
Okay. What about right now? They're 25 days, 3 weeks, 4 days old. So at what point do I mean, they're going through chick feed like crazy right now. They're every
That's
hour,
good. That's good. You need to
every hour it feels like they're bigger. So when do I move to
always feed more feed? Always feed more feed. That's our motto. Feed more feed.
I just got in my new country grower feed. When do I move to that?
Generally after go ahead, Jillian.
I was going to say, if they're 4 weeks old, usually you feed the starter for 4 weeks. On? Am I not visible?
I see you. I see your true colors.
I don't see Jillian.
Can you hear me, Brad? I don't think you can hear me. Let me try refreshing my thing. I don't know if it's on my end.
All right. She's going to be try to refresh herself there. So yeah, generally it is a.
Hey,
there we go.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Jillian.
I was going to say, for the first 4 weeks, they're usually on starter, and from there you can start transitioning them over to the grower over about a week's time frame. You just start mixing the grower in, and then switch them over to the grower by the time they're 5 weeks old.
Okay, is that like half and half when you're switching them over for that week?
Yeah, just a gradual change. Just because any sudden change can cause a gastrointestinal upset in any animal, whether it be ruminants or humans or otherwise. So you want to make sure it's just a slow change in their diet.
Okay. And then how long on the grower feed?
If they're laying birds, then you would feed it until they're about 16 weeks old or first egg.
So they will lay while they're on grower feed.
They could, yeah. And when they start, that's when you transition them because they're going to need a higher calcium intake to support their lactation, their laying.
It flew right off there. Now, generally, your chickens will start laying somewhere around the 5th month. So I mean, you could start moving away from the broiler and go into the layer feed at that point. Around 4 months. But it's the same thing with the starter. Don't just roll up the bag and set it aside. Go ahead and use it up. I mean, the same thing with the broiler. Since they're going to be on layer for their whole life, you may not get any more chickens. Don't waste the broiler. Go ahead and feed it till it's all gone, and then like some.
Okay, and so along those lines too, if you kind of switch them as they start laying, the calcium in the grower feed isn't at the same level as the layer. So do you need to have a calcium supplement available?
You can't have the oyster shell, but that's why it's good to maybe start to transfer them off of the broiler at 4 months and moving, start mixing in the layer because generally they're going to start laying somewhere between the 5th and 6th month. So you've got a month of time there that you're just using up what's left of your broiler.
Okay.
like I say, it's the feed is expensive enough that you're not just rolling up the bag, like I say, and putting it in the garage and never doing anything with it again. You might as well feed it all out. So
Yeah. But you
Okay.
can mix it though, and that'll help use it up while still allowing them to get the added nutrition from the layer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, what about grit? Like, I think the last time we talked, I think somebody recommended a river or a creek sand because it's a little bit finer. And so I've been getting buckets of sand from the creek and putting it in. And they love, I mean, they go crazy with it as a bath. And then they've also been pecking at it. So I'm assuming it's grit.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got sand out in our like horse riding arena. So, but it's not as fine as does it matter? Does it need to be fine?
The sand in your riding ring is not as fine as the creek?
Right.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that's unusual because usually the sand in your riding ring is extremely fine. It's like a playground sand. No, I would stick with getting what's out of the creek and putting that in there. And like I say, I mean, you're lucky that you have the added benefit of where your coop is that whenever they want any type of grit, they can just go over into that riding ring. If it's like I say, it's a good size grit, good size sand, that'd be just fine for them. Mm-hmm. So in reality, you probably shouldn't have to really provide any grit to your chickens just because you've got that riding ring there. They'll always get in there and get whatever they need, really.
But while they're in the brooder, is there a time that I'll take them to the bigger grains of sand versus the fine creek sand, or is it okay just to keep them on this one?
I'd just keep them on that one. Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure that your wife would not appreciate you out there with a shovel. I'm putting a hole in your riding ring. Don't worry, baby. This is for the chicks.
Crazy guess, but you're right. So then, as far as the dust bath, is there anything I need to be aware of? I'm just pulling sand out of the creek. Is there anything I need to be aware of as far as them taking dust baths in it?
No, not particularly. Like I say, it may not be a bad idea to mix a little diatomaceous earth in there with it. That gives it a little extra work for mites and different things that they may get. I mean, that adds an extra benefit to it, but no, I wouldn't worry that much about it. And I forgot you've got a great creek there. Yeah, you've got a great creek down there in the bottom. Yeah.
And no problem with diatomaceous earth at 4 weeks old?
Nah.
Okay.
As long as you're not putting like a huge amount in there.
Yeah, exactly.
You just want to put a little bit.
If they're dusting themselves and it's a big old white cloud, then you have to be worried about their respiratory issue. But mixing, just a little bit in there that's just fine. Like I say, that'll help with they're trying to control some mites and things, skin issues.
What are your thoughts on pine shavings? I got pine shavings in my brooder, and I got one person on Facebook had said, and I don't get all my information from Facebook, but I do have a lot of great advice that comes that way. But I had one person that said that the chicks can't distinguish between pine shavings and feed, and so when they eat the pine shavings, then it causes problems for them.
I disagree. It depends on the type of pine shavings you're using. I mean, usually the pieces are about this big, and that's very different from feed. We've always used pine shavings, and it's never been a problem. But I mean, certainly different circumstances. If you're using a different source, might be a different size pellet or something like that, rather than a shaving. So I'm not sure, but they typically don't eat their bedding.
Chickens have acute eyesight. I mean, they see the tiniest of things. If you ever watch them, when they're out there scratching away, when they scratch, steps back and take a look at it. I mean, they see the tiniest little thing moving around that you would. I mean, their eyesight is extremely, extremely good, and so they can. Yeah, instead of the four of us who are blind, basically blind. But yeah, they know what they're looking for, and so they can tell the difference between a grain and a pine shaving.
That scratching thing, when they scratch and then look down, that kills me. That is so funny to me.
Yeah. Like I say, Like I say, you've never till the like a chicken, looks at you and turns that eye sideways and looks at you with the one eye. And, they're sizing you up. They're sizing you up about that time, thinking, I bet you I could take him. I could take him.
And talk to me like right now. I'm we're 4 weeks in. What I've made the decision to go organic, but what's the impact it has on these chicks in a positive way? Is there anything to watch out for in doing organic feed to a chick?
No, you want to go, Jillian, on this, or?
I think you'll find overall that they're just a lot healthier. It's a balanced feed, so it's going to meet all their nutritional needs. The reason you would want to steer clear of more conventional feeds, especially genetically modified feeds, is because it can cause nutrient absorption problems. Or also at that young of an age, it can cause developmental issues as well. So keeping on a holistic diet, staying organic is the best nutrition they can possibly receive. So I think you'll find their growth is better overall. And there have been some studies too with for meat birds. I'll have to find the direct link, but I was reading one recently about the average daily gain was higher with organic raised. So granted that it depends on production practices, et cetera. You can kind of take a study to say whatever you want it to say. But I think overall, a lot of people are finding organics are the way to go because it's just a lot healthier overall and their birds and other animals do better.
Yeah, and you got to figure that when your chick starts out, that is starting out with a brand new immune system. It has and so if you're feeding a medicated feed, you're killing off a lot of what might be the good bacteria that aid in digestion that works toward their immune system. And so it's good to feed a good organic feed that is fortified with probiotics and things of that nature, because that's what you're doing. You're building the digestive system of the chicks. I watched a very interesting thing last night. I was watching the baby moose growing up in Canada, and they were talking about how the mother moose goes over and she will kind of nibble on a little branch and everything, and then the baby moose will then nibble on that branch. And so, but by doing that, she is transferring the digestive bacteria that is in her into the intestines of the younger moose, which will enable that moose to better digest what she's eating. And so that's how she's training him, but also inoculating his system by doing that. So
that's unreal. And that's genetic.
Nature's great, isn't it?
If you ever have, go ahead.
Brad?
Are you there, Brad? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's got to be genetic. It can't be that they know that they're doing this.
Yeah, I guess it's instinct. It's instinct to do that.
So, yeah, you look like genetics here. There's been no mother hen to teach our 5 chicks anything, yet they know how to scratch.
Yeah.
As soon as I put that sand in them, they started rolling around and taking dust baths that look just like our adult chickens do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that information is preloaded.
I don't get that. That's incredible.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's pretty neat. On the probiotic thing, it's interesting how he was saying, that they know to do that. It transfers digestive enzymes. Some people, if they have a ruminant with an upset stomach or coccidity issue, they'll steal the cud from a healthy ruminant and put it in a bolus and put it down the unhealthy ruminant's mouth. And it's kind of
what's a ruminant?
Strange. So whether it's cattle, goats, or sheep, anything with a 4-compartment stomach. But if you have one with an upset stomach, taking its herd mate, its healthy herd mate, not just some random one, but finding one of your immune or really healthy herd mate and then taking their cud and transferring it into the unhealthy animal, they've found that that's been one of the best methods for reestablishing the good flora in the gut, as opposed to using, something from a store, because it's one that's within the herd itself. So
the cud, of course, is what it the cow or the goat, whatever, it regurgitates.
Yeah,
brings it back up again.
It's kind of nasty, but it's kind of
nasty. But they bring it back up again, chew it up some more, and send it back down again. And so that's kind of that's the thought of that. I guess is it kind of revolves around the fact that they eat such a fibrous diet, and that just helps to break that down. So
how do you get it from them?
That I don't know. I tried one day. It didn't work so great. I think I got a portion that was maybe this big. It's really nasty.
Well, you can tell. When a lot of times when you just when you see a cow just standing out there in the field, just as my mother says, you chew your gum like you're chewing your cud. But their mouth, they're just working their mouth.
Yep.
Generally, that's what it is. They will immediately, whatever they eat, whatever they graze, they immediately take it down.
Yep.
And it goes into the digestive system. So whenever they're just standing around out in the field chewing, that's what they've brought up. So I guess if you can get out there and wrestle the cow to the ground and take it out of his mouth and then put it into another.
You can watch their neck too. You can see it coming up. Mm-hmm. It's kind of nasty, but it's kind of cool. I don't know. We didn't get it to work, but it's a lot harder than it sounds, I guess. Yeah.
Like going back to bedding, I also had somebody talk about some dangers with straw with chicks.
I don't see any dangers with straw. I mean, certainly there's the thought that if you're using some sort of straw that may come from like a wheat or a barley or something, that they might have used some Roundup or something to kill it off, because a lot of times that's done in the sense of they want an even kill for harvesting, so they will come in and just spray Roundup on the field, and just that way they have a good even kill, and then they know that they can come back and in 2 weeks and harvest. So that's a common practice. So I guess that's one of the things that would be a concern, is that whatever chemicals or something that might have been sprayed on the grains on the what is left over would now be in the bedding of the baby chicks. Would be, to me, that would be the main thing. Yeah. So.
Kind of your standard co-op straw. I know that when we were using a lot of that before, we had problems with mold. And so potentially if maybe they're concerned as the chicks are developing, they have a very young respiratory system, maybe that's a risk, because it tends to, I don't know, it's not as better packaged per se than hemp bedding or pine chips. So maybe that's a concern.
I don't know. I've had some people complain over the fact that they've used some straw that has come from something that has been sprayed with Roundup, and they've tried to use it in their compost pile. And then the residual, so they say that, the Roundup goes inert as soon as it touches dirt, but that's not necessarily true, and that they've had the residual effects, transfer over into their compost, and they put the compost out into their garden, and they have difficulty with trying to get their seeds and different things to germinate with that. So because once it starts to germinate, and then it just dies. That's the Roundup.
I've heard so many bad things about Roundup. I've also heard like vinegar and dishwasher liquid is a good.
Yeah, the vinegar is a high acid. Generally, you'd want to get something with the high acid somewhere like around a 200 grain. Works really well. You can do it with household vinegar, but the higher the acid, the more efficient it's going to be. And basically, what that does, it just burns it up. And the dishwashing liquid works as a sticking agent that kind of keeps it to stay on the plant a little longer than the vinegar.
You know what the ratio is? Vinegar to dishwashing detergent?
Pardon?
It varies on the type of plant too that you're using. So if it's something that's got a woodier stem, it might be a little harder to kill it off. So you might need a higher concentration versus if you have a more delicate foliage that you're targeting, it's not going to need as high. So you have to kind of play around with it depending on what you're treating.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it'll if it's young and succulent, you'll have some excess. If you've gone out there and there's it's a big old hairy, poison ivy vine, all you're going to do basically is just burn the leaves off of it. And that's it. So you're going to have to do more. You're probably going to have to cut it and actually get to the woody part, and then maybe try to paint the actual vinegar right into the woody part. But you got to be careful when you cut a poison ivy.
Yeah.
That, you got to make sure that all the chips and everything blow away from you.
Or get goats. I've heard that goats.
Or get goats. Goats love poison ivy.
Just don't let them give you kisses after, because then it'll get all over you.
Yeah, exactly. The goats the oils will transfer from the goats to you. So if you do have a big poison ivy patch and you put your goats out there, the oils will be on them. So you don't want to necessarily be cuddling them that much when they come out of the patch or something. But goats, goats do a great job of they will consume it right down. And of course, there's the old wives' tale, whether I don't know it's true or not, but if you consume the milk from a goat that's been eating poison ivy, you will no longer be allergic to poison ivy.
I'm still allergic.
Right. It's just I've heard that. I don't think that's true, but
nope.
I don't think that's true. But you're allergic. Nothing personal, but you're allergic to a lot of things.
This is true.
We can't necessarily use you
as the anomaly,
as our test subject. I think we may have to do some more testing with some other subjects. So, but yeah, that's the goats are amazing foragers. There are a number of businesses where you can, if you have a piece of property that needs to be cleared, you can hire somebody will come in with their goats and set up a temporary fence, and it doesn't take long for goats to clear a piece of property. There are some states actually, use them for roadside clearing. They'll just put them in there and let them do their thing. So
it's pretty remarkable.
I've heard that they're difficult to keep fenced in, that they find ways out. And
if you don't do your fencing properly, if you try to choose the cheap alternative and the quick method, it's not going to work for you in the long run, because goats are curious. They want to investigate. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily looking for trouble, although if you have a buck, that might be a little bit different. But if you invest in strong fencing, sturdy fencing, or electric net fencing, you'll have much less problems. Once we got our permanent fencing up, we haven't had any escape artists. I think there was only one doe I remember who we had to build like a bird cage for her because she was a jumper. And we ended up kind of getting rid of that line entirely because it was just in the genetics. Every single goat that had that pedigree or had a part of that pedigree, and it went back to one of my bucks, they had the jumping bean gene. And so we kind of got rid of them after a while because they were, it varies by the animal. But typically, if you have sturdy fencing, that they're not going to go and get out of that or get stuck or anything.
You need to make sure that there's plenty to eat, plenty to browse. Like I say, I've kept goats in a rather large area with just a single strand of electric string that I could step over. I would just step over it, but the goats didn't go anywhere just because they had plenty to browse.
Yep.
They had plenty to do in there, and so the string was very hot. Don't get me wrong, it was very hot. But if they wanted to, they could have easily just jumped right over it and left.
What about when you look at you don't need a rooster to get eggs from chickens? Do you need a buck to get milk from goats?
You do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although there was a rare case, and this has happened a couple times, but there was a doe in the U.S. that milked for 10 years without ever being bred.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that happens, but usually you do need a buck. And it's 5 months gestation. And you can choose to dam raise the kids or bottle feed the kids. I personally can't. I don't have the heart to take the kids away from the mother after they've carried them for 5 months. I wouldn't want somebody taking my kid away if that was the case. So we always dam raised our kids unless the dam rejected one of the kids, and then we'd bottle feed. But what we do is,
what does that mean, dam raise?
Meaning you let them stay with the mother. So it's called the dam and sire. That's the mother and father essentially.
Oh.
So for the doe, we'd leave her kids with them for 2 weeks. And then at the end of the 2 week period, which is about when the full milk comes in and the colostrum period ends, or the first milk ends, then we would separate the kids at night and milk first thing in the morning. And then the kids would go out with the dam for the rest of the day. And then we'd separate them at night and milk in the morning until they were 2 months old, and we'd wean them off and then milk twice daily.
And then how long will they stay active as milkers?
Usually as long as you keep them in milk. It's best for first timers if you milk them for a minimum of 10 months the first time, because that kind of sets the stage for their lactation. We have a doe right now. She's, I think she's a second freshener. Or she's on her second pregnancy. That's what it is. So she's a first freshener, but she's pregnant. She's due in May, but my mom's going to milk her through April because she's on track to earn her Dairy Star and a couple other titles through milk testing. I'm not sure what all it is, but if my mom keeps her on, for that month before kidding, then she'll earn that record, whatever it is she's working towards. So they can milk for as long as you keep them in milk. But
as long as you're milking them, as long as you keep milking them, they will continue. I mean, that's not the most advisable thing in the world, just because the lactation process takes a lot of energy out of an animal. Yep. I mean, that's probably the most energy that the animal will expend. So I wouldn't go over 2 years on that. I mean, that's definitely. And then if you do something like that, you want to give her a year off. She's not bred. She doesn't drop a kid again. I mean, this is just my opinion. I'm not gonna say, but just give her a break, because that's often why the life expectancy is often so short for the big time dairy cattle, is that they're in milk all the time. I mean, they just make milk the heck out of them. And I'm sorry, forgive me. And so, but yeah, I mean, it's, if you follow a more like of a natural process, it's easier on the goat, and your goat will last longer. Mm-hmm. I mean, you won't find yourself here in 5 years thinking, well, I've got to get another goat because she's, look at her, she's all tired and, she's done for. Yeah. I mean, I've had goats that have milked, well past, I've had kids and, well past 10 years old, and I'm sure that, Jillian has had that herself. So.
Yep. It's good to keep them in milk. Like I said, the first time, keep them in milk the longest period. And usually it's recommended 10 months, because that's going to set the stage for their lactation later on. As opposed to one of my does, when we first got started with raising dairy goats, we didn't want to ask too much of her. So I think we stopped milking after like 4 months, and now it's next to impossible to keep her milk past that point. We did train her to go a little bit longer than that, but her production severely declined after that period, because that's what she learned from the first time. So usually the first 10 months of lactation for the first pregnancy, or first time raising kids, etc., that's usually what sets the stage for them. And then from there, you can certainly give them a break. It's recommended if you do a back-to-back breeding, you only do it once, because like Kevin said, you're going to wear your animal out otherwise. They're not meant necessarily for that sort of production. I mean, if they were in the wild, that might be one thing, but they don't live as long in the wild. So, keeping their numbers up is more important. But as we've domesticated them, they do have a longer life expectancy if we respect their needs. So making sure they have time to recuperate, and replenish their calcium supplies, etc. I mean, it drains a lot from them if they're not getting it through nutrition. So,
is kidding giving birth?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. What about a house?
So, I mean, it's like I say, it's good. It's good for the family in the sense that you're not always looking to replace your goat, because the goat is a member of your family, and you need to learn to love your goat. And, you just the fact of all the time having to, I got to get rid of this goat, got to get another goat. It's hard a lot of times to me. I mean, it's hard on the psyche,
Now, we have had a doe, she was one that she would complain if she wasn't bred by a certain point. So it was like in her system that she knew what she needed to do in life. And so
she's a floozy.
Yeah. So for her, if we didn't breed her, I don't know, if we didn't breed her, then she would get out of the fencing somehow and go find the buck. So there was some points where we were just like, all right, she's going to end up bred through the fence anyway, so just go ahead and breed her. But that's not usually the case with every goat. So you have to know your animal too, and know what they're able to handle. So that same doe, she's 9.5 now, and she's called it quits. So with her, I mean, she's super healthy, but she's just, we haven't had success breeding her the last time, which would have been the 10th kidding. So she produced quite a lot. She was a strong milker for us. But you have to know what they can handle. So it varies by the animal, but you certainly don't want to stress them out too much.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about a house? Do you need a house for them?
I would suggest some sort of shelter. It doesn't need to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be a very elaborate thing, but certainly you need something to get them out of the weather, a windbreak.
What about, like a coop protects the chickens from raccoons and foxes and stuff. Do coyotes? We live around coyotes. Coyotes, raccoons, anything attack goats?
Yeah, I lost a goat to a bear. I was just in bed and I could hear the goat, bellowing, and I thought maybe she might have stuck her head through the fence or something, and I just went out there and hopped over the fence, and a bear had climbed over the fence on the backside of it, I guess, and had caught I had two goats in a shed, and I guess one of them ran out, and he caught one as the other one came out, and it just. I ran the bear off, but she just ended up just.
So do you lock them up at night like you do in the coop?
I did not. Like I say, I had a 3-sided shed that they would go into. I had a Great Pyrenees, and so I just thought that would be enough. That the Great Pyrenees would create enough of a ruckus, and for some reason that night the Pyrenees decided to take the night off, and much to my chagrin. So, like I say, I just.
But with any animal, any livestock, you're going to have losses at some point, whether natural causes and just wearing out, or whether from predators. You're going to have that risk. A lot of people, especially with those who have more land, they choose to just free range them, and they'll have a run-in shelter like Kevin's describing. If you have less land than that, a lot of them tend to use a barn, or they're like these massive dog igloos, essentially. Mm-hmm. If you've seen those, it's the same kind of concept. Mm-hmm. And then they just move it around the yard. So they have something to run into. It's not necessarily the best protection wise. That's going to be your fencing. That's going to be the best method of protection. But for my own family, we do have a barn. I'm surprised it's still standing because the guy who built it in a long weekend and wasn't expecting it to be a barn. So we turned it into that. And we've made modifications to it since. It has, pens. We put 2 to a pen at night. And we clean it, as often as we can. And I think my mom's on a bi-weekly schedule now. But that's because she has, a number of goats that she's cycling through that area. But it kind of varies on what you're looking to have. We keep our milk stand and everything in our barn, so it's just easier to have them right there. Mm-hmm. And we also do stanchion feeding. So it's helpful to have a barn so we can section out the feed and know that each goat is getting a certain amount.
But generally, your greatest time of fear, I guess, for some sort of predation is during kidding season, because that's when when the goat is down, she's kidding out. If she's not in a barn or something, that's when she is at her most vulnerable, and also her kid is at the most vulnerable. So like I say, there are some people that pasture kid, and there are. The majority of, a lot of people bring their goats into the barn
or garage
for that reason. Yeah. Or garage or whatever is convenient. Yeah. So that's generally that's probably when your greatest fear of if they're out in a pasture when there's going to be trouble with a predator.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, heading back to chickens. I'm at 25 days right now. When can I tell these 5 are either roosters or hens? And how do I tell?
I would say more when they're fully feathered. That's the easiest method. I can't set chicks when they're that young. I'm terrible at it. I don't know how people do it at a day old even. But when they're older, they have different feather patterns. The males, if I'm correct, have more pointed feathers, whereas the females are rounded. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
So when they start crowing, that's when you really know. Yeah. That's
so what do you do? I've got 5. The average says there's going to be 2 or 3 that are roosters. With my luck, it might be 4 to 5. But what do you do when you have multiple roosters? I mean, is it possible that they get along?
It's possible. Mm-hmm. Certainly, anything is possible.
Not likely, or
a lot of people separate them out. But if you've only got 2, usually I mean, I don't want to say usually, but sometimes they'll get along. We had two. One of them, though, he must have been dropped on his head when he was a baby because he didn't know he was a rooster. So they got along just fine. But there's been other people who have had their roosters fight a lot. So it depends on the individual animal. You know, if it's starting to get really riled up, you might separate it out from your other males if that's the case.
Gotcha.
And you'll have to, like I say, then at some point in time, you'll have to either find other homes, or take care of it in other ways. Just because, yeah, exactly. Go to freezer camp. Just because the main point is that you have how many hens do you have right now? 4?
4 hens and a rooster, yeah. And
yeah,
then 5
so you have 4 hens and a rooster. So let's just say all 5 of your babies end up being roosters. So now you've got 6 roosters and 4 hens, and the amount of pressure on those 4 hens is going to be way too much, far too much. They'll end up injured. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So. What about I've got a Brinzy Echo Glow brooder heater. How long do I need to keep that in the brooder?
You're starting to get to the point. Are they feathering out fairly well?
Yeah, they're doing pretty good.
Yeah, so you're starting to get to the point where you want to have a 65 degrees. I think is the good temperature that people talk about. That if it stays around that temperature, you don't necessarily need it, but it's still it's February in Illinois, so you have to be vigilant of what your weatherman is saying. Like I would think that possibly. If your weather's anything like ours right now, you're probably getting some pretty chilly weather right now, and so you're going to have to keep that thing going just to make sure that they don't crowd up. That's because what they'll do is they'll bunch up and ball up together, and crowd up like in a corner or something to try to stay warm, and there'll be one that's on the bottom that could suffocate, something like that. It may not be that much of a trouble with 5, but if you had more chicks, it can become an issue because, like I say, they'll all ball up to try to stay warm, and some of the ones that are on the bottom will suffocate. So,
you see that post under the message there? Is that a concern?
I'm not sure.
It's the consumer. It sounds like the consumer appetite for organic food is more than the supply.
Oh, yes, it is. That's by all means. I think I'm trying to think of, I read some sort of percentage of like 70% of all organic grains that are grown, that are consumed in America come from overseas. We pride ourselves here at New Country that we don't buy any foreign grains, but in general, majority of all grains that are consumed in America are foreign. There's organic grains grown in South America. A lot of the soy comes from India and from China, and there's a lot of organic corn and things coming from the Eastern Europe. A lot of that, which it's interesting when you start getting involved in these grains and everything that we truly do live in a global economy. And that the economy is doing quite well in America, but if you go to these other countries, the economy is not doing that well, and so you pay a dollar or whatever you pay for. The dollar is much stronger in like Eastern Europe or in South America, so we pay you're paying very little for the cost of the grain, but that a dollar goes a long way in the Ukraine, Like I say, their economy has collapsed. So either you can buy, organic or what is considered to be organic, corn from the Ukraine for nothing. And so.
But do they have the same standards? Are you able to?
They're supposed to.
Yeah. They're
supposed to have the same standards. They have their inspectors and everything. But I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't know if I necessarily trust the Russians. So. I've seen too many movies growing up, but it's just, that's just, certainly, yeah. I'm sure there are some. I'll just say that probably a majority of them might be, properly done. But I'm just I'm speculative, and like I say, it's an opportunity for someone to put some grain on the market and charge a little extra for it, and but I don't have the opportunity to fly to South America and inspect the farm and make sure what they're doing.
Have you guys thought about, is the plan to buy your own land at some point and farm it and grow your own?
We've talked about trying to do something like that, or do more contracted work with farmers. Try to work with them. I'm trying really hard in Virginia to try to get more organic grains started. It's quite difficult in a lot of ways. There's still quite a bit of the mindset of that there's 9 billion people in the world and we need to feed them, and the only way we can do that is with GMO grains, and and then that comes from from Richmond, that comes from Virginia Tech, that comes from a lot of the major ag schools, because there's not a lot of funding that comes from an organic side of life. Chemical companies provide quite a bit of academic funding, and schools need funding. So that's kind of where the majority of a lot of comes from. So I'll just.
Well, on a much smaller scale, I'm looking to start my organic farm this spring. What timeline am I looking at? When am I supposed to be tilling that ground and planting?
Well, first it's deciding whether or not you want to follow tilling practices. A lot of organic tend to go no-till, and they'll utilize their chickens instead, or do minimal tillage instead of doing that. Because what happens when you till is you're kind of disturbing lower levels of the soil that is already working on building your organic matter, et cetera. You don't necessarily want to disturb those levels. So it kind of varies on what your goals are for production. Not everything needs to be tilled. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, no,
I'm a tiller myself. I usually will till once a year. In particular, it all depends. Like if you're doing a cover crops, it's good to try to, because you're going to have to try to, if you're going to have to try to get that cover crop somehow killed and incorporated into the soil. So I generally will till something up in the springtime. And you can start gardening, most any time in a lot of ways. You can make little hot houses, just with some pieces of wood and a piece of plexiglass.
I can't.
Well, you can make a square.
I can't.
You can make a square. Yes, I know you can. You can make a square, and you can drill a piece of plexiglass on top of that and create a microclimate, and go ahead and start right now and just start doing some greens. Do some salad greens right now if you wanted to. Okay,
let's say that I pass on that.
Yeah.
When is the right time to start planting an organic garden?
Usually it's after the last frost of the season. So you would have to check that by your area. You could Google it, or go by Farmer's Almanac, or just kind of watch your temperature changes and see what's most consistent. But like for our area, I think the last frost is anywhere between April 21st to 30th, but that's just in the Waynesboro area. You go 2 hours north or 2 hours south and it's a totally different date. So.
And what are some of the things that would be the first?
You can start your greens early. I mean, greens can start very early.
You say greens or green?
Greens like salad greens. Arugula, lettuce, things of that nature. You can start those, pretty early. And same for like peas and like say beets and some of your root vegetables. You can start those all pretty early. And of course, you have to do your potatoes on St. Patrick's Day, or they just won't work. They just won't work. So
it depends on the crop. You can also do, I know he mentioned doing kind of a solar panel idea, or however you just phrased that. But you could also do a small greenhouse where you could start them inside and do transplants. And then you can start 6 to 8 weeks before that last frost, and just get like a UV light that you can hang 6 inches above your greens. So, however, or above your seedlings, and start them inside.
One of the things I saw was to help to get things started. Just something you could do. Probably it's going to be a good start this fall, and that is to go around and collect people's political signs. Just because they have it's kind of a U-shaped. The wire inside them is kind of U-shaped, so you could get rid of the sign part and keep that U-shaped wire, and you can put those into a row, in a long row, and you can just drape plastic across that and create like a little mini microclimate with that, just with some clear plastic.
It's like a really small hoop house.
Like a small little hoop house.
That's a pretty cool idea.
Yeah. So there's always there's hope that something good is going to come out of this election come November, and that could be some extending your season for some greens. So.
A good question here about organic pesticides, whether that's the next gold rush for entrepreneurs. What are your thoughts on that?
Certainly there would be. I think, like I say, I'm still not. I'm not a big fan of even the organic pesticides that we have right now, just because it's so hard to have them be non-selective against pollinators. If someone tells you, oh well, yeah, well my insecticide only kills Japanese beetles and it doesn't harm ladybugs or honeybees in particular, I guess, or actually bumblebees or probably even more important in a lot of ways than a honeybee. That's basically that's hard to believe, to say that, oh yeah, it's all insecticides are going to have some sort of effect on beneficial insects. And so to me, that's always a last resort. I am overrun with potato bugs, and there's nothing I can do. And my only hope is to try to just go in there and put some Pyganic, or I hate to be throwing names around like that, but something like that, or BT, or I can't think of what the other Bacillus is. Oh well, I can't think of it. Yeah, but all of those basically, they will harm beneficial insects. So it has to be a must thing. So.
There was a follow-up question on that. He said, so you prefer traditional pesticides? And
No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying. What I'm saying is that if you're going to be using a pesticide, it's do something that is organic, that is some sort of like a Bacillus-based type of thing. I can't think of what that is. It's not. Serenade. Serenade is one of the companies that does it, but it's a Bacillus-based product. Things like that are, they don't really cause any harm to the soil environment in any way, in a lot of ways, and they are a naturally occurring product. That the one that I'm trying to. Lord, I can't think of it. Anyway, it actually occurs naturally in the soil, and it just so happens if a bug eats it, it dies. So I'm not any type of chemical product. The residues and things that come along with that are much worse than like a BT or like a Serenade product. I'm almost going to have to get up and go look on the label of this product
Bacillus subtilis, a soil-dwelling bacterium that controls leaf blight, black mold, powdery mildew, and many other diseases.
Yeah. So.
Is that what you're looking for?
No, it's what's on this. Just a second. I'll be right. You all just chat. I'll be right back.
Okay. Here's another question for you, Jillian. When I've noticed, like, I'm picking up our chicks a lot and handling them, and at night their crops are really, really full. It feels tight. It's so full. Any problems with that?
No, as long as you see that that's going down by morning. What they do, they eat in excess, but because they're prey animals, they're going to store it all there in the crop. And then from there, they slowly digest it. And I think we mentioned last time, it goes through a series of...
I have returned, and the mystery thing is called Spinosad.
Oh.
It's called Spinosad, and the urban legend behind the Spinosad is that a guy was on vacation in Puerto Rico, and he was a soil scientist. And while he was visiting a rum distillery type of thing, he thought, well, I'm just going to go ahead and just, this looks like some interesting stuff. It's just so he just took a handful of dirt, put it in a little bag, and took it home with him, and started looking into it, and discovered this bacillus that kills bugs, and it's very effective at killing bugs. And well, that's just he sold the rights to that, and I'm sure he probably owns his own little island now, because it's probably one of the number one considered to be an organic insecticides there is. So.
So going back to your question though about the crop, as long as you're seeing that go down, and not consistently stay super bulged, then I'm not concerned. It tends to have kind of a funny feel to it when you're not really used to seeing it full like that. But chicks eat a ton of feed. They book through it, and it's because they need that for their growth. So as you just watch them, as you pick them up and handle them, check them in the morning, if that's a concern, but they'll be fine.
It says here, there's another little thing here that Mr. Monty Henry says, farmers strike it rich by selling, GMO-free crops. And so you've got to understand what the difference between what is a non-GMO crop and a certified organic crop. A non-GMO crop is what conventional agriculture was, 15 years ago, before someone, developed, a Roundup Ready or a corn infused with BT. So a non-GMO uses the same exact fertilizers. They use the same exact insecticides. They use the same exact fungicides, the same exact herbicides as conventional. Mm-hmm. The only difference between what is considered, that's non-GMO grain, and conventional is just the seed. Only with organic are you required to you have to use naturally occurring fertilizers such as manure or things of that nature, and you are required to show when someone comes out and certifies your crop, you have to show what you are doing to improve the environment, to improve your soil. What are you doing to improve the environment? For, like I said, non-GMO is conventionally grown. So. Monty Henry is on his way to a conference in Orlando, Florida. Brian Vanderberg pulled his talking microscopic soil dwelling organisms. It could be, yes, yeah. You could. Who knows? The amount of what they are discovering now is immense. They had discovered some sort of new antibiotic that just basically comes from the soil, and it took a long time for them to develop this, because once you tried to grow it outside of the soil medium, it would automatically die. So they had developed a little membrane of which they would grow this culture in dirt, and that's the only way they could get it to multiply. And they've found new breakthroughs in that product, because we're always looking for something because of the antibiotic resistant, the MRSA, I guess is like that, is getting hard to control these days. So. Mm-hmm. And just like I say, just the amount of biology that's in good soil is immense. The things that they're discovering. I mean, as far as what is linked to the relationship between the plant and the soil, and I guess in our relationship of the bacteria that lives inside of us. I mean, it's a new frontier. It is a new frontier.
Well, to have healthy people, you have to eat healthy food, and to have healthy food, you have to have healthy animals. And where do they get their health? It's from healthy soil and healthy crops. So you got to literally start from the ground up.
Because you got to figure that if you do have a grazing animal, a lot of the time their nose is to the ground. They're ripping things up out of the ground, and that's how nature first, I guess, intended them to keep their system going, is because they are consuming healthy soil. Because when they pull up a clump of grass, they're pulling up the roots, they're pulling up a lot with it, and that's what's going into their system.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions, Brad? You're always we're
Yeah, no, I went through my whole list. You guys knocked them all out today. Great
yeah,
stuff. Thank you.
It's been a good conversation today. Like I say, it's I think that I know you've talked about getting goats, and I think that will be I think you'll enjoy it. I mean, you'll be challenged. Don't get me wrong. In the beginning, you will be challenged, and you'll wonder, my God, what have I gotten myself into? But I think the benefits, as far as the milk that comes out of it, and the other products of which you can start to do cheeses and yogurts and keepers, all of those types of things are biological that help out your system.
And I may be a little biased in this, but you may think hatching chicks is great, but just wait until kidding season hits, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah,
I can't
wait.
When you see little goats in little sweaters, it's pretty great.
I can't wait.
Or if you do get into the Nubians, which is there's a larger but big flop-eared goat. I mean, to see a little baby Nubian is just it's
They're
to
the
die
cutest.
for. You'll just melt. Your little heart will melt.
Yep.
But they are also the most vocal of all goats. So they will also just whenever they are unhappy, they will let you know that
you could go the route of mini Nubians, which is a Nigerian dwarf, which is what I raised, crossed with a Nubian, and they're exceptionally cute as well because they're a little bit smaller, but they still have the ears and everything, and not quite as loud.
Still produce milk?
Yeah, they're not a registered breed in the U.S. right now. So if you're looking to get into, registered pedigrees, etc., then you wouldn't want to go that route. But if you're just looking for something adorable to raise that also produces, that's an option. I always wanted those.
And I think your wife she'll really get into the baby goat.
Yeah, she's already fallen for the chicks.
Yeah, like I say, you wait till she falls for a baby goat. So
my mom always jokes that my brother was going to end up raising goats, and when he got married, he goes, "No, we don't want any of that." Well, then Lindsay, my sister-in-law, came over. She's been to she's come over almost every time they've kidded because she wants to cuddle the baby goats, and so my mom was like, "You just wait. 5 years down the road, you're going to have your own."
Awesome.
All right, folks, we have once again gone through another hour of blabbing. So. I think for all of you all that have tuned in, and I think Brad for coming in. It's always enjoy having Brad on the show here. So
appreciate the help.
Well, like I say, anything we can do. So you are like our guinea pig in a lot of ways. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Awesome. We'll see you guys soon.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care, everybody.